Hey guys, my name is Coraline and today I'm doing my monthly recommendations for the month of October, and the theme this month is spooky reads. So monthly recommendations was a group that I started with my friend Trina from Between Chapters, and it's been going on for a few months now, and we have just been so excited with all of the different input that we're getting from you guys and all the videos that you're putting out. So everyone who's participated so far and everyone who's participating this month, I just wanted to send out a huge thank you, and I'm just so grateful that you made our first collaborative project for like a Goodreads group so successful to us. But anyway, I'll get right into my recommendations, and I actually only have 4 books that I'm going to be recommending because spooky, scary, horror type reads aren't my forte. I don't read a lot of them because I am someone who is very easily scared. So I will be recommending ones that I've read that just really creeped me out, and keep in mind that these aren't the most horrific stories that you're ever going to read, because I do not read those because I will never sleep again if I do. I am just not someone who can handle very scary stuff. So this is like on the lower end of horror. Just keep that in mind. So the first book that I'm going to be recommending is The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly, and I actually picked this up because of a monthly recommendations video for underrated books, and Birth recommended this and she just said it was really good, and guys, it is incredible. This is a story about a little boy who went through some pretty tragic things. He lost his mother, and then he had to move in with his dad and new stepmom, and they just had a baby, and it's just a lot for a little boy to go through and a lot to process. And on top of that, he's having some very strange mental things going on, where he's hearing voices coming out of books. And one night he ends up journeying into this fairy tale-esque world, and he just journeys through that to find the king who has the Book of Lost Things. And this book is filled with fairy tale retellings, all wrapped around this one boy's adventure, David's adventure. And it's just, there's a twist. Each fairy tale isn't told quite like you would expect. It has a horror element to it, and it's just very unpleasant. It really goes back to the roots of original fairy tales that were incredibly unpleasant to read and didn't have happy endings. And this book has this really creeptastic horror element to it that I think is just perfect for October. And just on top of that, the writing in this is just beautiful. I was so wrapped up in the story. I would put it up there with J.R.R. Tolkien and J.K. Rowling, just the way that it really sucked me into that world. In no way is this book anything like those as far as plot goes, but the world that was built in this book, I was connected to it, and I was really connected to the characters in it, and I just found that this was really incredible. So highly recommend this. Any time of the year, but specifically the month of October would be perfect to read The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. Next I have a little bit of a classic, at least for me, and that is going to be Coraline by Neil Gaiman, and I'm sure many people have seen the movie adaptation to this, which is equally creepy, but this follows a little girl named Coraline who goes into an alternate world. There's kind of a theme going on here. I didn't plan that, but she goes into this alternate world where there are alternate parents who love her and want her to be there and just want to just make her a part of their family, except things go wrong because they are kind of evil, and the world that she has went into is very crooked, and she finds that her parents have been captured and that there are other children's souls that are captured within this world, and she has to play a game in order to release them, and the person she's playing a game with isn't very trustworthy or kind. So this book is horrific and wonderful and just whimsical and just everything you expect from Neil Gaiman, but with a horror element to it. And I'll say again, this isn't a book that I think would keep you up all night without being able to sleep, because then I would never be able to read it. But I was looking over my shoulder when I read it and getting kind of creeped out, and I only read this during the daytime because I was like, if I read this right before I go to bed, it's going to be a bad time for me, and my nightmares are going to be so prolific and I'll never sleep again. But in the daytime, it's not too bad. Next, I have Slasher Girls and Monster Boys, which is a collection of short stories that are selected and edited by April Genevieve Tukolk. Again, don't know that last name. But I hauled this a couple months back, and I've actually read a few stories in here, but I would like to highlight one particular story that was just terrifying, and that was The Girl Without a Face by Marie Lu. And so far this has been my favorite short story in the entire collection, and the one that I'd really like to recommend. All the ones that I've read so far have been really nice, but this one has really stood out as horrific and scary. And I think it is the perfect story to start off with if you read this anthology, because you don't have to read any of them in order for it to work. So if you have this, I highly recommend checking out The Girl Without a Face by Marie Lu. It follows a boy named Richard who moves into a new house and his closet door is locked, and that just kind of ties in with a story from his past, and the way that it just weaves together is really nice, especially for a short story. I wasn't expecting that big of an impact, especially with how two storylines come together for a short story, but it was really incredible, and the writing in it was done really well in a way that it was atmospheric and creepy, and I just felt really creeped out. And I was actually reading this on my lunch break and the light started flickering in my office, and I was just immediately like, I'm going to die. That's how good this story is, which, I mean, that's a terrible feeling to have, but I mean, if you're reading a scary story, it's kind of satisfying. Ignore me sometimes. I don't know. It's really good, and it has some inspirations from What Lies Beneath, which was a film that came out in the early 2000s, something like that. And that is one of my favorite scary movies ever, because it's like right up my alley for scary stuff that I like. So I was really glad that it had some of those elements in it, and it was done really well. And finally, I have The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black, and this isn't necessarily scary, but there's a particular scene in this book that really had me creeped out, and it was just incredible. And if you've read the book, then you know, but it's the scene that happens in the school, and it was just done so well. This entire book has elements of creepiness in it because it is about a town. I believe the town's called Fairfolk, if I'm remembering correctly, and it is a town where both humans and fairies exist. However, the fairies are very evil, and they trick tourists and everything and kill them, and they have their own types of rituals, and the humans have to perform their own rituals and have their own wards and everything against the fairies to protect them. So there is kind of that creepy factor throughout the entire book. But there is one particular scene that is done in this really wonderful way that just kind of makes your skin crawl when you're reading it, and it's just horrifying to read, and it had me on edge for the entire chapter, and I was just so scared of what was going to happen to the characters, because the way it was written, I was just like, no, 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 what's happening here, what's going to happen, what's going on, and it was just terrifying to read. So I had to throw this one in there because that particular scene was so well done and so wonderful. Okay guys, that has been it for my recommendations this month. I didn't have too many, but again, I don't really read a lot of horror. I am going to try to read a couple of books this coming month that are going to be more creepy and scary just because it is October, and I am trying to push myself out of my comfort zone as far as reading goes, because I do like to try to be a well-balanced reader and just dip into a little bit of everything, because I love reading and I love reading different genres. So I am really excited to try out some new things this month, and hopefully it will not wreck my sleeping schedule. So that's it for today's video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay weird.